My name is Bobby and I am the company trainer here at Vancouver Massage. And today I'm going to show you some basics on cupping and the techniques that I like to use in particular. We're going to have a list at the end of the video of specific contraindications and things to look out for as well before you cup any client. So what I like to do is start with a nice layer of oil. You don't have to make it too slippery, just enough that the cups want to stick on. If the skin's dry, they don't typically like to hold suction as well, and it makes it a little harder to place them. So this is a good time even to do some aromatherapy application if you wish, depending on how you start with your client. I like to start on the feet, so I usually start with the cups on the back. I'm going to show you how to do cupping on both the back and the hips. And I just tend to alternate them. So if I'm working on the legs and hips, the cups are on the back. And if I'm working on the back, then the cups are on the legs and hips. And we work with the silicone cups mostly. They come in 4 different sizes, and I tend to like to use 4 sets of cups when I can, but 2 sets of cups is sufficient. So while I'm doing this cupping, we're going to pretend that this is just a general client that doesn't have a lot of different issues. I will place the cups in other specific places based on certain complaints like shoulder injuries, or if they're having a really hard time with their mid-back, I might opt to place the cups just down the center of the spine. But when you're doing things like that, you have to make sure you're avoiding areas like the kidneys, so you can keep smaller cups going down the spine, but you don't want to have cups barring out into where you're going to have certain internal organs that you want to avoid. You also want to avoid moles. There's if they have little moles, big moles, doesn't matter. You don't want to pull extra blood in that area if at all possible. Just avoid it. So by placing them, all you do is you lift up one edge while pressing the top down. So I place the cup on the body, and while I'm pressing with my thumb, I'm lifting up with my fingers, and that'll create a really good suction. And I'm gonna make it look really fast, but it might take you a little longer at first. You're also wanting to avoid areas of lymph drainage and any high circulatory areas where you can see the veins. You also want to avoid any arteries. Alright. Now, once I get all of the cups on, I check in and ask, is that pretty comfortable for you? Mm-hmm. All right. So a good thing to note is after about 5 minutes, what I like to do is check in on how dark the client's pigment is getting. As you can see, some of these are already getting darker than the others. Chinese medicine would tell us that's the area of more stagnation and dysfunction. So all I do for that is I'll lift up 1 cup. And as you can see, that's not bad at all. That's normal. It's even normal for them to be darker than that. You just want to make sure that there's it's not getting too dark. It doesn't look like there's blood vessels being broken. Now capillaries do break, and that's where a lot of the reddening comes from. But you can also check and make sure that blisters don't arise, because that can happen if the skin is too dehydrated. We can check down here. They all look pretty good. So another thing that I like to do after I place the cups before I move on to another part of the body is I do a little bit of percussion on the cups. And what that does is it helps, honestly, it helps make the cups not as intense at first, because they will be intense at first. And I always tell the client, within about 5 minutes, you may even forget that they're there. But if they do become intense or itchy or uncomfortable in any way, do let me know. Now I'm going to show you how to do gliding with the cups. You can either opt to do this a little bit lighter on the suction, or you can go deeper. And a good thing to show you too while we're here is if the client does happen to tell you that the cups are too intense, you can easily let out some of the pressure just by pushing your finger under the edge of the cup, and that'll let some air in and give you, and sometimes that happens. You can also just press a little less. You can just take it off and just press a little less of the air out, or you can lift up to let a little more air in if it's uncomfortable. So, you just lightly come up and down, and you can go back and forth. But as you can see, this creates the pinkening a lot quicker. So we're not going to do dragging for very long. And I like to just go down the body and then slowly back up. Again, if the suction is relatively tight, it can be much more intense the faster you go. So if you want to go faster, I would suggest making them a little less intense on the pressure. Just like this. And you can come in and see how you're seeing much more blotching happening, and that was just from a few moments of the dragging. So be very aware if you're doing this method that it will mark fast, and you don't need to do it for very long to create an effect. Also, another thing to note is that if your client has any kind of darker skin tone, it's going to be harder to see this marking happen. So just be more aware of their skin tone and what it looks like when they start, and also their skin texture. That will help you address if there is any issue, if you should stop, or if everything's okay. Now, as I said previously, if the client is not wearing anything, I assume that they are okay with me doing the cupping on the hips. But I always ask. A lot of people don't even realize that that's a thing that can be done. With men, it's really impossible to do with them wearing anything just because of the nature of their undergarments. But with women, if you ask them if it's okay for you to move or manipulate their undergarments a little bit in order to place the cups and you get a verbal okay, then you can move forward. Also, if they're wearing like even smaller underwear, you don't really have to manipulate them at all in order to place the cups. I'm going to show you now how to do that on the hips. And when I'm normally doing this is when I'm about to work on the back. So I would undrape just like I'm about to start working on her back. And then I just fold a nice little triangle like that. And that exposes about everything we need to place the cups. We're going to add our oil. And then what I like to do is start by placing the little cups right at the tailbone. And then from there, I just go from little to bigger, and I go around the hip. Now, sometimes I may put the larger cup towards the outside. I may put it towards the middle depending on what the client has going on in that area. I always put one big one right on hamstring attachments.
The ischial tuberosity?
The ischial tuberosity. Okay. And there we go. There's one side. And you would do the exact same thing to the other side. So what that would look like would be...
So would you do them at the same time then, Bobby?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we would be doing all of this at the same time. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to do all of them. There we go. And that's about all you need to know about cupping. Again, we're going to put a list of contraindications and other things of note at the end. I do want to say that you don't want to keep the cups on any more than 20 minutes, and the average person between 10 to 20 minutes is great. So even 5 minutes is going to do something for the client, but I like to hit somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. If they seem to be getting a lot darker, than what they should be, then obviously pull the cups off. And always spreading a little bit of lavender oil too can help disperse that marking a little bit in the initial process because it'll help reduce inflammation. Another important thing to note and to keep in mind is whenever a client does ask for cupping, even if they have had it before, it is important to let them know that they most likely will mark. Some people do not, and that doesn't mean the treatment didn't work. It's just some people are more sensitive than others, some people have more dysfunction than others. It's important to let them know that these marks can stay anywhere from a few hours to a couple weeks. 2 weeks typically is if there's an older injury that there's things like being pulled up from, as the cups will bring up impurities and old dead like stale blood from inside congested muscle tissue. So that's what we're seeing when we're seeing the marking. Never use the word bruise. I like to use the word marking because bruise makes people think there's like trauma happening to the area and they're going to hurt later when they really shouldn't feel any pain afterwards. We're not doing Chinese medicine cupping, we're doing like massage cupping. So we're not trying necessarily to get out these impurities. What we're trying to do is stretch the fascia and stretch the muscle tissue and warm up that area and help release things that maybe we couldn't necessarily get with our hands, because what the cups do is they provide a slow stretch where the body is able to relax over time rather than whenever we're just on and not trying to get into it and it's potentially painful. The cups are not as painful and you're able to relax easier into it, and then that deeper stretching occurs. Now we're going to learn the most fun thing, which is how to clean the cups. This seems like it should be really easy, but it's actually really easy to leave oil on them. So what we're going to do is you always want to use warm water or hot water, as hot as your hands can take it. That helps break down the oil. So I put the soap directly into my hands and I start to get a good lather. You pick up a cup and you want to get every surface covered and lathered with the soap. And what I like to do is do them all at once and let that soap sit on there just a little bit longer to help break down the oils. And how I know that I've washed each cup is I always stack them back into themselves so that I don't ever miss a cup or think, oh, did I wash that or not? Nope, they're all washed. So once they're nice and soapy, you get your nice hot water. And what you will notice is that when all of the oil is off, they are literally squeaky clean. I don't know if you can hear that in the video, but they almost sound like a little frog croaking. So as long as you have them nice and lathered, you use nice hot water to remove the soap, they're going to come out beautiful. Now, a way to tell that you didn't do it, because you won't tell initially when they're wet, it'll be after they have dried. So you can't say, oh, well, you know, they seem clean when I wash them. They will, except for the fact that if they have oil on them, they will not squeak. But if they dry and they're cloudy, or they're slimy, really it's the sliminess that you'll tell there's still oil, but if they're not, again, they'll squeak. Squeaky clean.